All right, and welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast, Week 4 Reaction Edition. Tonight, we react to another exciting weekend of NFL football and tell you what it means for your fantasy football teams moving forward. I am your host, Seth Woolcock, and of course, if football is being played, that means, unfortunately, injuries are happening on the field. So to break it all down, we are joined by a man who was once a resident at places like Stanford and Harvard. He's now the internet's favorite orthopedic sports surgeon, Deepak Chona. Doctor, how are we doing tonight? Great to have you in.
I am doing well, Seth. Thank you again for the kind intro. Let's get to it today.
Absolutely. Good day for you and your Houston Texans down there. So I know vibes are high. Vibes might not be as high with our other host joining us tonight as well. He is the backbone of this fine company, Scott Bogman. Boggs, have you recovered yet from the football frenzy over the past 48 hours, both at the pro and collegiate level, my friend?
Yeah, Steelers disappointing today, but I had a decent fantasy day here, so I'm doing okay. 3-1,
Okay.
Not where I expected our Steelers to be at this point, so I'll take it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a big shout out to everyone who's listening alongside us here, either live on the YouTube channel or maybe afterwards still on YouTube or on the podcast feed as well. We're seeing your questions coming in. We're seeing all the reactions you guys have as well. So we greatly appreciate that. Wherever you guys are watching, make sure you guys are subscribing. It is the easiest way to help support us here and all the work we're doing at Fantasy Pros. And let's go ahead, guys. Let's jump into the injuries because it was a busy one here, unfortunately, specifically in that Steelers game. Where we had Anthony Richardson. He left after getting popped by Minkah Fitzpatrick. He walked off. He came back in. They ran a quarterback run with him, took another big hit, and then went straight to the locker room afterwards for x-rays on that hip there. Deepak, how do you see this one shaking out? How do you see the severity of this hip injury for Anthony Richardson, the talented second-year quarterback?
Yeah, they're calling this a hip pointer, which is really honestly best case news, because most of the time they wouldn't cause a missed game, or if they did, they would likely not cause more than one or two. Mm-hmm. So I would slightly lean towards him returning. These are very painful, but the practice reports will give us really the key insight as to how that's progressing. So structurally stable injury gives him a chance to play soon.
Okay. Bogman, any thoughts for you just kind of on this situation and him leaving the game and then coming back in? It seemed kind of short-sighted for Shane Steichen to throw him back out there. So what are your thoughts on that? And just in general, if we do not see Richardson for a couple of weeks, what happens here for the guys like Michael Pittman Jr. and Josh Downs?
Probably be better, honestly.
Yeah.
Like Joe Flacco came in and made it rain a little bit. So Josh Downs was looking good. Pittman looked good with both those guys. Finally getting him into a rhythm was really nice. But you're right, Seth, man. I thought it was so dumb to not only just bring him back, but bring him back and then run him immediately was surprising. But I saw a report afterwards that the Colts were saying if this was a playoff game, he could have stayed in, all the stuff that they always say. But I don't think he's going to miss next week, but we'll see.
Yeah, it was some of the best games of the season for guys like Michael Pittman Jr. and Josh Downs. So if Rich is unfortunately out here for a week or two, like Deepak says, or if he misses no time, that's great as well. But if he's out, it'll be okay for these fantasy options, including potentially if he's out there, Jonathan Taylor. He was kind of one of these beneficiaries from Joe Flacco taking over, had a season high 3 receptions in this game. But Deepak, he left here with an ankle injury late. What does your initial diagnosis say?
Yeah, it's a little hard to tell severity. A lot of these, as we're seeing with even high ankles with Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes before that, they're being played through more and more by quarterbacks.
Okay.
So there's some reason for optimism. It's a little hard to say severity initially, and not a lot out there at the moment. So we'll kind of be keeping an eye on that one for the time being.
Okay. And Boggs, if JT were forced to miss time here, do you expect it to probably be a mixture of Trey Sermon maybe getting the early downs and then Tyler Goodson working in on passing downs?
I think it'd probably just be mainly Sermon.
Okay.
Yeah. Mainly Sermon. Goodson will mix in for sure, but he's more of a special teams guy at this point. So maybe a pickup, maybe someone off the practice squad. It will be those two guys, but I think Sermon would be the main dude.
Okay, absolutely. Moving forward here to some other injuries that we have of note here, heading into Sunday Night Football here. Christian Watson was carted to the locker room after getting a really awkwardly bent leg under a defender here. It was deemed an ankle injury before he was carted into the locker room. What's your initial evaluation and analysis on this scary injury, Doc?
Yeah, the video looked like a high ankle sprain, and the way it twisted, it looked, at least on that moderate spectrum of the severity. So with that, the average would be about 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
It'd be pretty surprising to see him back next week, at least. But I wouldn't call him injury prone because his prior issues, those hamstrings that were recurrent on him, this is a very different sort of mechanical issue rather than the muscular. So I wouldn't call him injury prone, but do expect him to miss some time.
Okay. We hope to have him back out on the field soon. He is an electric player for that Packers offense. Boggs, if we do have a couple weeks here without Christian Watson, is Dontavian Wicks a possible play for us? Talented second-year wide receiver. We know this guy has some speed, has a little bit of juice, had 2 touchdowns in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's an option anyway, even with Watson out there, with the way Watson has been playing when he's on the field. So I think, honestly, if he misses time, it just makes this wide receiver room a little bit more clear into who the top 3 are, and you don't have to play magical chairs so much with these guys.
Okay. All right. I like to hear that. Sticking with the wide receiver position, maybe the biggest injury of the day for fantasy manager. Rashee Rice took Patrick Mahomes' helmet right to the knee on an interception return. Andy Reid said heading to halftime that it, quote, wasn't good. What say you, Deepak?
Yeah, the best case scenario here, you're looking at least a bone bruise and a sprain of the knee. Even that would be probably about 2 to 4 weeks. But really what's concerning here is that the knee looks like it buckles going backwards. So that puts your ACL and your PCL, which are both extended or potentially season enders, at risk. So we'll find out pretty soon here with probably MRI tomorrow, and then know for sure.
Okay. Oh man, Bogman, this one's tough because it feels like Rashee Rice has really become the most important weapon in this offense for Patrick Mahomes, especially after losing Isaiah Pacheco already this season. What happens now without him? And don't you dare say the words either A, Juju Smith-Schuster, or B, Sky Moore, my friend.
No, I'm going to say Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is the guy there. Noah Gray also had a few extra looks today, so I think he would be a decent addition if you're hurting a tight end with Rice down for the foreseeable future. Worthy should get more targets. Yeah, I mean, it's been an injury plagued season for this offense so far for Kansas City, but I do think that I think Kelce is just back on the menu at this point. I think that's basically what it is.
No early waiver wire circles for you in this Chiefs offense. We saw Kareem Hunt a little bit more involved today as well.
Yeah, I mean, Kareem Hunt was really surprising. We'll get to that game in a little bit. I think Carson Steele fumbling early kind of sent that into motion. But yeah, Travis Kelce, I think, is the main guy. And we'll have to look for the snap count to see what it was because Juju was super involved last week. I didn't see him as involved this week. I didn't get to see the entirety of that game. So we'll have to kind of look at snap count, see what the coaches say, and play it from here. But I just think Kelce is the guy that's starting to get those targets now again.
Yeah. Keep an eye out for Noah Gray as well. He kind of like in some tight end premium leagues potentially, in a Scott Fishbowl league, something like that. Maybe Gray's a guy who maybe gets a little more bonus. I watched a lot of the second half of the game, and I felt like they're featuring him quite a bit. And sometimes when they're down a man, they usually do as well. So just a name to keep in mind there. Looking at the Thursday night football game, rounding out our injuries to monitor here, Malik Neighbors. He went off in this one. He continues to potentially be an elite wide receiver for fantasy managers here. Suffered a concussion though. In the back half of that game. Deepak, what say you with the potential wide receiver one early in the season? What's the severity of this concussion looking like?
Yeah, the average on these is about 8 days or so. And the one good thing that works in his favor is that it was a Thursday game. So they have about 10 in between that Thursday and next Sunday. So the data actually slightly favors him playing, but this one is going to be just watching the reports and seeing he is likely to, if he's going to get cleared Friday or so, would be when I expect that announcement.
Okay. Oh, awesome. Well, for once, like, thank goodness for Thursday night football. I'm glad that happened on Thursday. A couple other here injuries of note, Deepak, of players that didn't play on Sunday. Christian McCaffrey, Rap Sheet told us today that the 49ers expect him back potentially early in November after the star running back traveled to Germany this past week to get some treatment to help deal with that Achilles tendonitis. Does that fit your timeline as well?
Yeah, it does make sense because they also said they're going to start ramping him up. Once they start doing that, it usually takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get a player kind of back to game level. And so that very much lines up with the early November timeline. Now, the thing about McCaffrey that's important to think about if you're trading for or away is that you typically do see a high per touch production or efficiency when players come back off these injuries, but then he's going to likely see some load management and likely have a very high re-injury risk the entire way. So with that in mind, kind of proceed with caution.
Deepak, are you trading for Christian McCaffrey in any of your leagues?
I am not. I'm actually seeing if Jordan Mason can come on a discount with this news that he's ramping up, because I think the ramp up is going to be a lot more saving him for the playoffs than anything else.
It's everything I need to know right there. If the doctor is trading away Christian McCaffrey and looking to pick up Mason, I'm going to listen to you on that one.
Boggs, with that being said there, where would you rank Mason rest of season? Been a running back one so far this season, had a really good game here in week 4 as well, over 24 PPR points. So is he still like a fringe running back 2 rest of the way for you? Because even if McCaffrey comes back, he might handle some of that workload still?
He's probably a borderline RB1 until Christian McCaffrey comes back. And then when and if McCaffrey comes back, because I don't know how much I'm buying this report either, but when and if McCaffrey comes back, he is going to be limited, as Deepak has told us. So I don't know. I still think he's very, very valuable, and I'm with Deepak here all the way. I'm trying to get Mason on a discount with this news coming out. Probably not going to happen because I think everyone thinks it's fool's gold at this point. It's like, they already fooled us once in the preseason. Are they fooling us again a second time? It kind of seems like they might be. So I'm just going to avoid Christian McCaffrey.
Okay. Devontae Adams also here. Despite rumors, this was not a business decision that he did not play here. He actually tweaked his hamstring in the closing minutes of the Raiders Thursday practice session. Is this your usual 2-week hamstring injury here, Deepak, or could Adams maybe miss more time here because it's happened so late in the week and he is a little bit older of a player as well?
Yeah, so that's the one thing worth pointing out is that age over 30 does predict a little bit slower return. Average is about 2 weeks. So we would expect him to probably fall in that 2 to 3 range, but it's going to be a little bit just having to follow symptomatically. And from our standpoint, the practice reports more than anything else to see when he's going to come back.
Okay. And Bogman, if he's not back next week and or the week after, potentially throwing Trey Tucker into some lineups, he had a touchdown again today.
Yeah, Trey Tucker has been fairly valuable for what he is. I would think Brock Bowers would get more targets here, but Minshew looked bad again. I don't know if they're going to play. I think I said magical. I meant musical chairs earlier. Musical chairs with that QB spot again at some point because Minshew didn't look good. But yeah, I think it'll be, the guy, Jacoby Myers gets a lift, Bowers gets a lift, Tucker gets a lift a little bit because that's a lot of targets gone.
Okay, absolutely understandable there. Deepak, we can't thank you enough for joining us here, not just this week, but every single Sunday night here. And hope you get some rest here in the coming weeks and your Texans continue to go full throttle here through the AFC.
Yes, sir. Pleasure to join y'all. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you, Deepak.
Absolutely. We'll get Deepak out of here and stay tuned for the game recaps right after the break.
Have you ever felt like you're just guessing when you're placing a bet? Look, we've all been there, hoping for that big win, but lacking the confidence to back our picks. Well, what if I told you that you could turn those hunches into winning strategies? Betting Pros will transform you from the casual bettor into a betting pro. First up, meet the Prop Bet Cheat Sheet and Prop Bet Analyzer. Sync your fantasy league with Betting Pros by signing into your FantasyPros account and review your players' weekly props with all the historical data right at your fingertips, and you'll be able to make confident over-under decisions. You'll be ready to dominate all those prize picks and underdog pick'em leagues with our exclusive prop projections and correlated picks that will empower you to build data-driven pick'em parlays. Say goodbye to the guesswork and hello to strategic betting. And if you have a gut feeling about a player or a team's performance, with our betting systems and our system builder, you can turn that intuition into a profitable system. Create your own betting system for free and receive ongoing bets that match your criteria all season long. This all sounds great, right? The best part, though, is that you can get a free trial of Betting Pros Premium right now. If you've never had Betting Pros Premium, just head over to bettingpros.com/apps and download the Betting Pros Sports Betting app and activate your free trial on the upgrade screen. Start your journey to becoming a true betting pro today.
All right. Shout out Joey P for that. We appreciate it. And before we jump into the games, I wanted to remind you, if you want a chance to win a free signed Devonta Smith Eagles helmet, all you got to do is head over to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form, and either A, download the Fantasy Pros My Playbook app, or B, leave a review for this podcast and follow us on X, Instagram, or TikTok at Fantasy Pros. The more actions you complete, the more entries you will receive, and we will be announcing a winner right here on the podcast. So if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to click subscribe, turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize. All right. And Boggs, let's go ahead and jump into the games here, starting with Atlanta, where Younghoe Koo gave the Falcons their second victory of the season, taking down the Saints 27-24. I think Saints fans could maybe argue this one slipped away from them a little bit as they dominated both time of possession and third down efficiency in this one. For the Saints, it was your usual suspects from a fantasy football perspective: Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Taysom Hill back to his old ways, vulturing some touchdowns before he exited this game as well. But for the Falcons, a largely disappointing day from those skill positions, including Kyle Pitts, who gave you a big old bagel here. So where do you stand on these offenses following this game, man?
Yeah, so I mean, I think with Atlanta, it's super frustrating, and you have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. I know people are mad at Kyle Pitts, right? And if you want to bench him, I completely understand that. I don't think I'm dropping him quite yet, although I get the frustration. But holding the ball for only 24 minutes, I mean, it's just surprising. Cousins did have 35 attempts though, and couldn't get the ball to Kyle Pitts. So super frustrating there. I get it. London with the 12 targets, he was good. Yeah. Darnell Mooney is becoming more of a target right now than Kyle Pitts is in this offense. He had 6 targets in this game, caught 3 for 56 yards. And we saw a little bit more of a split than we'd like between Bijan and Tyler Algier. I mean, you're not doing anything with Bijan. He's still Bijan, right? But Algier, it is getting frustrating. It's not quite Arthur Smithian like it was last season, but it is very, very annoying. So I understand frustration there. On the Saints side, I mean, Shaheed made up for his donut, right? First time he ever had double digits targets in his career, 11 targets, 8 catches, 83 yards. He did lose a fumble, but also had 14 yards rushing. Olave was banged up, but came through. Kamara was still big. Like you said, the usual suspects there. If Taysom Hill is going to miss time, Juwan Johnson saw a lot of snaps here, 50 snaps in this game. I think he'll be a guy moving forward, although like Kyle Pitts, he didn't get anything in this game here. So frustrating for Kyle Pitts for sure. Bijan is going to be fine. Tyler Algier, maybe, a deep league flex option. Darnell Mooney is moving in that direction as well. But yeah, I mean, Kyle Pitts is the main thing here, and I don't know what else to say about him. He's super frustrating. So if you want to get rid of him and find another tight end, I understand that.
Who are we talking though? We talking Mike Gesicki? We talking Hunter Henry?
Not
Cole
Mike
Kmet?
Gesicki. It's not. No. Cole Kmet would be the guy out of that group that you just said. Nobody else though. And that's the frustrating thing. Is the top of tight end has been not great this year. Andrews has been bad. Kelsey has been bad. McBride got hurt. You know what I mean? So tight end has been looking more and more desolate every single week.
I will say for Tyler Algier on that note, keep pounding the over rushing yards on his prop totals. They're like 18, 15 yards sometimes.
Yeah.
So I've been making a little bit of coin over there on that side of things. And looking at Kamara and how good he has been for fantasy managers, potentially up for fantasy MVP if we were to end the season today, where would you draft him in a redraft knowing what we do know now?
Yeah, I mean, it'd have to be close to the first round, probably in the first round at this point. He's been so great. So, Kamara's been amazing. He was completely underlooked going into the season and has performed as he has in the peak of his career. So
we're done rostering Derek Carr, right? Like no more rostering him. If you have to pick him up and stream him, we'll stream him here and there, but not using a roster spot him. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, he looked really good, and it kind of got us to this point where it was like, okay, is this new offense just going to be so much better, right? And the last 2 weeks, first 2 weeks were great, last 2 weeks not so good. So we're back to normal Derek Carr.
Okay. All right. Back to Carr. Like it. Let's shift to Indianapolis, where there was a Ben Roethlisberger sighting in the suites of this game. And despite his Steelers falling to the Colts 24-27, I think he can take pride in this game that Justin Fields and the Steelers offense looked more competent than I've seen them in a really long time, honestly. Over 4 yards of total offense here for the Steelers, 6 for 13 on third downs, 32 fantasy points for Justin Fields. Big days for both George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth as well. Najee Harris, kind of the only major disappointment for the Steelers here. 13 rushes, 19 yards. We saw Patterson have a little bit of burst there before he went out with a scary injury as well. So if you delete a few fumbles and a bobbled snap on the last drive, there's a lot to like for Steelers fans and fantasy managers alike here, Boggs. Do you share that sentiment?
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably not as excited as you are, but I was happy to see Pickens have a great game. I was happy to see Freiermuth and Fields really throw the ball. That was very, very nice for fantasy managers and everything. Najee looks so terrible. Like Cordell Patterson was getting in there, ripping off big runs against what was the worst run defense in the NFL coming into this game. So I was a little surprised to see how terrible Najee was. So that was disappointing. And if Jaylen Warren is back next week, we might see a little bit more Jaylen Warren. And if Cordero is fine, we might see a little bit more Cordero mixed in. So I think, the arrow is pointing up for Fields, Pickens, and Freiermuth. It is definitely pointing down for Najee right now in terms of the Steelers offense. But everything on the Colts side, outside of, these guys getting hurt, of course, if Taylor is going to be able to come back, he looked great. And we saw Flacco get the ball out to Pittman. We even saw Richardson before he went down get the ball out to Pittman, breathing some life back into these targets in Indy. Josh Downs with a huge game as well. So I really like the Colts side a little bit better than I like the Steelers side as the winners here.
Pittman 6 for 113 in this one. Regardless of quarterback play, are you putting him back into lineups next week at Jacksonville, you think?
100% Jacksonville secondary still sucks. Nico Collins torched them today. So Pittman should be very good next week.
Josh Downs over Alec Pierce the rest of the way too?
Yeah. Alec Pierce is a nothing burger, I feel like, at this point. I think Mitchell will those guys will eat into each other, and they're big play guys. Like Pierce will have a nice 45-yard touchdown catch, in some games. Other games, he's probably going to have 1 for 16 or get blanked. He just goes so boomer bust. Pierce.
Okay. Moving to Lambeau Field, where everyone had the Minnesota Vikings being 4-0 on their bingo card after beating the Packers 31-29 here. And credit to the Packers. They were down 28-0 in the second quarter and started to come back throughout the rest of the game here. For the Vikings, it was great to see Jordan Addison back on the field as well. He turned 4 targets into 372 and 1, and he also ran to find Pater as well. Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson continue to deliver for fantasy football managers as well, as does Sam Darnold. This is his third game with 19 plus fantasy points. He was already QB5 on the season coming into this one. Are you buying this early season run from the Vikings in general, from Darnold as a legit fantasy football QB1, or could this all go to heck and Darnold could eventually turn back into a pumpkin?
Nah, Sam Darnold is good in this offense, and this has been typically the week 4 and beyond is when he does turn into a pumpkin. But this is Kevin O'Connell's offense, man, and they are going to throw the ball a lot. And Addison is up. Jefferson is still amazing, right? TJ Hawkinson's going to be back here as well. Aaron Jones catches the ball well out of the backfield, as does Ty Chandler. So the pace and the attempts are always going to be high for Sam Darnold here, which is why I liked him going into the season. And he has shown a lot of success here, and I'm sure there will be a down game. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Sam Darnold's about to win the MVP. I don't believe that, but I do think he is a very, very stable quarterback at this point for this offense right now. And, time will tell if he can keep this success. He hasn't really been able to, but they're not making the throws hard for him. He's very Brock Purdy-ish here.
Could you imagine what those odds would be for an MVP ticket on Sam Darnold before the season? I mean, you would already be getting a crazy cash out.
His ticket would have been and the field. That's I don't know that he had a number. Maybe he did, but I didn't see it. So I also was not looking for it, by the way.
Yeah. So, all right. Big day for the Packers fantasy options too here. Reed and Wick both over 20 PPR points thanks to Jordan Love's 389 yards and 4 passing touchdowns here. Tucker Kraft, you talked about him on our Sunday stream a couple of weeks ago as well. He had his first big production game of the season, 6 for 53 and 1 touchdown on 9 targets. How do you feel about the entire Packers offense moving forward, including Josh Jacobs, who has yet to actually score over 13 fantasy points this season, Boggs?
Jacobs is becoming more and more frustrating. If you listen to Pat Fitzmaurice before the season, you heard him talk about how LaFleur just always splits this backfield, and Emmanuel Wilson has been getting involved. 8 carries for Emmanuel Wilson as well. So Jacobs has been frustrating. I think he's kind of moving into that. I mean, he should get more work, but he's kind of moving into that touchdown to dependent type of player, which can get on your nerves when you're starting them on an every week basis. But I love seeing Dontavian Wicks with 13 targets here. Only caught 5, but he did score twice. That was huge. Jaden Reed also just looking so good on that final drive where they scored the touchdown to pull within 2 and then couldn't get the onside kick there. But yeah, I Jaden Reed looks good. All these targets are back up with Jordan Love on the field. So let's just keep Jordan Love upright, and hopefully he has another 54 pass attempts. I know that's not what Packers fans want because that means you're down the whole game, but 54 pass attempts really helped out these targets for sure.
If you're one of these fantasy managers, Bogman, who maybe has Rashee Rice, or maybe you have Malik Neighbors or Devontae Adams, one of these banged up star wide receivers, and Wicks is sitting out there on waiver wires. I know I drafted him, and I had like 50% exposure across my redraft leagues, but I ended up dropping him after Jordan Love got hurt. So would you spend any type of real fab to go get him, you think?
Yeah, I think, 10 to 15%, depending on what you have left now and what your needs are looking like for the rest of the season, because we're into bye weeks, we're right there. So bye weeks are starting in week 5. So yeah, I would be spending a little bit of fab on him for sure.
Okay, in Houston, it was a vintage performance from CJ Stroud and company where they won 24-20 over the Jaguars. Stroud had its 345 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Very, very, very good day for him overall. Big day for Nico Collins as well, 33 fantasy points. Stephon Diggs got into the end zone on a kind of unique run in the red zone, and also had a big day through the air as well, 18.5 fantasy points for him in the absence of Tank Dell. Meanwhile, the Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence threw for just 169 yards, and it was was really only Christian Kirk and Brian Thomas Jr. who were the big deliverers for fantasy managers here. Who are the biggest risers and fallers in this AFC South clash, Boggs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to be Tank Bigsby. ETN banged up. He did come back, and ETN did still have more snaps, 30-17 for Bigsby. But Bigsby just looks better right now. ETN left with the shoulder injury, and then he came back. I don't know, we'll see if that gets worse during the week or whatever, but it was very, very strange. Brian Thomas becoming just an every week start for the Jaguars with another touchdown here. Kirk, 2 good weeks in a row is huge for him. We'll see what happens when and if Evan Ingram is back. I do expect that to be a little bit more scattered than 8 and 12, 20 targets going to those 2 guys. So we'll see. But I love Nico. It's just becoming Nico would be a guy that is probably a first round pick at this
top
point.
5 wide receiver rest of the season.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah, he and this is I didn't know that he would be this good going in, but it was the argument between Diggs and Dell, but and people wanted to lump Nico in there. I was like, I don't think so. Nico is fine. Nico is the guy that has proven to be true. Obviously we'll see more running for this team when Mixon gets back out there and Pierce gets back out there, because it was another, gross game of seeing Cam Akers back out there. Cam was fine, and Agumba Wale scored a touchdown against his old team, which was fine. I just, we want to see Mixon out there. Mixon is the guy.
Game-winning touchdown too, nonetheless.
Yeah, against his old team. Very, very nice.
ETN to me kind of feels like almost like a strong buy low candidate. They do play the Colts next week, so if we do maybe see the Colts defense we thought we were going to get against Najee and the boys here this week, maybe ETN bounces back. So I might be going out and trying to potentially trade for him. And you can actually use our trade analyzer at fantasypros.com/myplaybook or on the Fantasy Football My Playbook app to instantly evaluate how any trade will affect your team for this week and the rest of the season as well, or even in Dynasty. I think this is really important to keep in mind here. You don't want to make a bad trade. We are only 4 weeks in, so we don't just want to be firing out, blind trades, but we do need to keep improving our team week after week and for the long haul. So make sure you guys are checking that out over at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. All right, and let's continue here in Chicago, where Caleb Williams moves to 2-2 with a 28-14 win over the Rams here. Not a ton of offense in this game, just 586 combined offensive yards. The Rams punted just once, but they did turn it over twice, including a pretty bad pick from Matthew Stafford in the red zone. From a fantasy football perspective, it was Kyren Williams who continues to be the only real difference maker for the Rams for fantasy managers, 20.4 PPR points. But we did see Tutu Atwell get involved again, 4 for 82, and Jordan Winnington, 6 for 62. He stepped up in a big way today as well. But largely a disappointing day for the Bears receivers, I would say, Bogman. DJ Moore, the only one in double-digit points, 3 for 22, did get the touchdown to salvage his day. But somehow DeAndre Swift, when everyone doubts him, everyone puts him on his bench. Everyone throws Roshan Johnson in the lineup. He comes out, puts on an absolute clinic here, 6 for 93 and 1 on the ground, and then 7 receptions for 72 yards here. What do we do with Swift, the Bears, and the rest of the Rams relevant players here, Boggs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of status quo here. I'm not going to I'll say, look, I was a week early on DeAndre Swift. I thought he was going to be huge last week. He disappointed. I was mad. And then we heard the stuff about Eberflus saying that Roshan's going to get more. And I was like, Swift looks close to done here. And then he goes out and has a game, right? He was enormous in this game against an inexperienced defensive line for the Rams, which is so it's nice. You can put him, you can depend on him as a flex option again. I feel like as soon as I say that, he'll probably have a miserable week next week, but that's the DeAndre Swift story that we know, right? That's how it's kind of always been. So I think the targets are going to be fine. Yes, this was a bad game for Caleb. He just didn't have to do much for them to win. So they didn't put the ball in his hands as much. On the Rams side, I mean, it's status quo with Stafford and Kyren is still very, very awesome. But it seems to be that we're moving more towards Tutu and Whittington and pushing DeMarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson out. Tyler Johnson only had 10 snaps. He's a drop. So if you were invested or in a deep league or whatever, he can go. Whittington's the guy there. DeMarcus Robinson still had 52 snaps and 28 routes. So
really? Okay.
DeMarcus was still involved in this, but Whittington led in snaps, 59. Atwell had 55. So those guys were above both Robinson. Tyler Johnson is on the outs here. So Whittington looks like a decent pickup as of right now.
I think I'm ready to wave my white flag for Blake Corum as well. I've been hanging on to
Done.
him.
Do it. Yeah. I mean, it is like if you're in a super, super deep league, I'm in a league with a bunch of bench spots with IDPs and stuff like that. So if you're in that type of league, okay, maybe hold on. If something real bad happens to Kyron, he is a decent handcuff. You would think maybe we'd go to him over Ronnie Rivers, right? Or at least split it a little bit if he got hurt. But he's doing nothing. He's getting you a donut. He's not even involved. He had no snaps. So if you have a short bench, a regular 6-man, he can go.
Boggs, you watch more college than anyone, so you know how good Blake Corum is. Like, do you think he just can't be trusted in pass blocking, and that's why he's not out there?
It's McVay. McVay goes with one back. That this is just what he does. He goes with the one back that he likes and gives him the majority of the snaps. He has another guy back there who's a veteran, probably a little bit better in pass blocking. That probably is the difference, Seth. But when they go with a guy, so that's why I'd say, like, in the future, he could be a guy that gets the rock a bunch of times in this offense, especially with Kupp and company, Puka coming back really at some point here.
Right.
But as of right now, he's just a waste of space on your bench, so he can go.
Agreed. Moving forward here, Hurricane Helene was not enough to sink the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ship as they take down the Eagles at home 33-16 here. Baker Mayfield was big early in this one, 3 total touchdowns for the kid in the first 16 minutes of this game, finished with 28.9 fantasy points. That's his second such performance in 4 games this season. Welcome back, Mike Evans, 8 for 94 and 1. And thank you for the continued production, Chris Godwin as well. And before we get to the Eagles, I want to talk about just the real mystery of this Buccaneers team, and it's the backfield. Rachaad White and Bucky Irving, both 10 for 49 on the ground. White had the long reception, but Irving was the one who found pay dirt here. Are these both like high-end RB3s, do you think, the rest of the way, or do you think one overtakes the other in due time?
It's still like split and shaded towards Rachaad White. 45 snaps for him to 32 for Irving. Irving has been getting the scores. So if you want to call him more trustable than White, I'm absolutely fine with that. If you think that the upside is higher on Bucky over Rachaad White, I'm also okay with that. I'm not doing anything with Rachaad because he was banged up coming in and sick. So, my immediate thought is it could shift way more towards White coming up here. So we'll see what happens. Bowles said he's going to ride with the hot hand. I think Bucky has played better, but it's not getting him more time. It is getting him those goal line carries, which is very nice. But you're right, Seth. They're both kind of startable flex options right now.
Okay. And for the Eagles in this one, no A.J. Brown, no Devonta Smith. And it felt like the entire offense really paid the price for that. Just 227 total offensive yards for the Birds here, 2 total touchdowns for Jalen Hurts, but still has only scored over 17 fantasy points once this season. Where would you rank Hurts rest of the season, you think, among quarterbacks?
Ooh, man, that's a good question. Probably as a QB2 at this point.
He really? You think you're all the way? You think you're all the way down there?
He hasn't looked good. He's looked pretty bad, and these targets are banged up. They get the bye week here, so I bet in week 6 they're going to come out like gangbusters, right? You get your guys back, you get 2 weeks to prep for that game. It's going to look great. So I think that will be there. But yeah, I mean, he has looked real bad. These targets have been hurt. Goddard had the big day today, but Jahan Dotson, not trustable. Paris Campbell, not trustable. So I thought we'd see more. I thought this defense would step up, but they were pretty miserable against Tampa Bay, as you mentioned, with Baker Mayfield going nuts there. So, I mean, it's just, let's hope that these targets are both back after the bye.
I'm curious who your quarterback one is, but I'll ask you that later here because I might have an inkling on that. Meanwhile, in Carolina, the Bengals finally get on the board, beating the Panthers 34-24. Pretty even game across the board, though. And what else do you expect when Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, is slinging around the yard for Carolina? But for the Bengals in this one, Chase Brown had his best game to date, 16 for 80 and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Jamar Chase hit a home run ball, kind of salvaged his day. And just great CT Higgins back out there healthy as well. Meanwhile, for Carolina, Chuba Hubbard goes for 22.1 fantasy points. That makes it 50 combined fantasy points in the last 2 weeks for Hubbard, a guy no one wanted to draft. And Deontay Johnson also with his second 20 burger in a row here, posted 13 targets this week after 14 last week. Any praise for Deontay Johnson, Hubbard, or Xavier Legette, who took 6 receptions for 66 yards and a touchdown here as well?
Just thank God for the red rifle and making these guys viable, right? Because Bryce Young was so bad, and it was time. You have the whole rest of your roster to worry about. So even though they didn't come through in this game, they still looked very good. Chuba has become a startable option at this point. I mean, you want to start him over Rachaad White, don't you? So, I mean, it's not really even a question right now. Deontay getting so many targets is great for him. And to see Legette get 10 and really be the guy to step up when Adam Thielen went down was huge. So, I have a lot of praise for them. In terms of the Bengals, with this backfield, this is very, very similar to the Tampa Bay situation that we just talked about. Split carries, still more snaps for Moss, 40-27 in his favor. He ran 5 more routes than Chase Brown did as well, but Chase Brown looks like the better back. So Chase Brown is that guy that I am not dealing at all. I think that this is a guy that can step into the starting role. I think Zach Moss is injury prone, and I think he will get hurt again because he has every single year of his career. So for me, I'm all about Chase Brown, rostering him, and maybe trying to still buy him cheap if you can, because I think he will be the guy for the Bengals moving forward at some point this season. And it did not look like that the first 2 weeks, but he has looked very, very good the last 2 weeks.
How do you feel about Joe Burrow? Like, would you rather have Hurts than Burrow still? Like, because I definitely would. Like, Burrow has just been, I don't know, he's kind of been a ghost, I feel like, for fantasy managers for a while now.
I'm not there yet. I would say that Burrow has not looked terrific, but last week gave me some hope. I think he's going to get better, and that's the thing. They said the risk will improve as the season goes on. So I'm still not completely sold off of Burrow, because I feel like as soon as I do that, 350 yards and 4, it'll just make it rain and look like his Heisman season. So those targets are still very good. I would like to see Jermaine Burton get more involved for this offense. Josevich has been great, but they need some speed to take the top off, get those guys open underneath a little bit more. So I think Burton probably plays a decent role at some point, but I don't know when, because he only had 4 snaps in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's round it out here for the early slate with a game that nobody really wanted to win. The Broncos win 10-9. Jets fans are freaking out on the internet right now. They're calling for Breece Hall to be benched after 10 carries for 4 yards. Aaron Rodgers completes just 57% of his passes for 225 yards. And Garrett Wilson with another stinker, which is kind of a bummer. It feels like he was almost better last year with way worse quarterback play for fantasy purposes, at least. But still, don't get it twisted. Like, the Broncos, I felt like also stunk in this game. Bo Nix had just 12 completions for 60 yards. 60 yards. That's not a typo. That's not a mispronunciation.
It was -7 at halftime.
And the crazy thing about that, Courtland Sutton caught all 60 of those yards and a touchdown as well. So is it Joe over here for the Jets, you think, Boggs?
I mean, no. What I do think is, I think this Denver defense is pretty good. They've been solid all year long. They came in here, a little bit of weather here as well. So, I mean, I just think the Broncos defense is good. And this was, the Jets coming off Thursday night, they had extra rest coming into this game and extra time to game plan as well, and still lost at home. So I don't know. Aaron Rodgers looked bad, 42 attempts. I know Garrett Wilson had Pat Surtain on him a lot. So I'm still not that worried about Garrett Wilson. This is a terrible performance, but we were kind of, this is a game where you see a terrible performance and it's because the guy across from him is super talented. I was kind of surprised, honestly. The biggest surprise to me was to see this not really split and go back to Javonte, 16 for 77 for him in the run game, and McLaughlin only 9 carries, and the snap split was 35-21 as well. Beatty got carted off, so he's probably done in terms of, they were getting him mixed in a little bit last week just to see if it would work. So Breece Hall, I understand it's frustrating, and people like Braylon Allen, but it was still 51 snaps to 27 in Breece Hall's favor. So, he's still going to be the guy to get most of the production from this spot. Braylon Allen is a nice goal line option because he's enormous. We're not starting Braylon over Breece Hall. That's never going to happen. I can't believe people will be calling for that. So that's crazy. I know it's a frustrating loss and everything, but we're not doing anything with Breece. We're not doing anything with Garrett Wilson. Sutton is like maybe your only startable piece in Denver. Got my anytime touchdown, which was like 2 plus 285 or whatever. So I like that. But it looks pretty bad in Denver as well. After the big week against Tampa, it was looking good. Jets are a tough defense though. So defense came to play in this game. The offenses did not. Not too surprising.
All right, Boggs preaching some patience there to Ed the Fireman and company over there in the Jets fan base. And before we continue, I did want to remind you to join our Fantasy Pros Discord community, chat with other fans, and get access to exclusive AMAs that wind up on our podcast feed. Boggs actually hosts a couple of those. We've got a new schedule for the rest of the season. Joe, the Welsh, and Boggs, they'll be on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern time. The Welsh and Erickson are back on at 2 p.m. Eastern time on Thursdays. And then Fitz and Boggs are at 5 Eastern on the third Tuesday of each month. So come get your questions answered and be on the show at fantasypros.com/chat. All right, let's move to the afternoon slate where we have a new wagon of the NFL. It seems like the Commanders 42, Cardinals 14, another 24 fantasy points for Jaden Daniels, another 20 for Brian Robinson Jr., Terry McLaurin, back-to-back games with a TD. Where is Daniels for you rest of the season? Where's B-Rob for you rest of the season among their position groups? Is Daniels the quarterback one?
Lamar is still the quarterback one for me, but Daniels has looked outstanding. He's been so good. Another bad secondary. Cincinnati's bad secondary. Arizona has a bad secondary. So, not surprising to see him. And, people were a little bit worried about his passing and all that. And the guy was a passer. He passed at LSU. He passed at ASU. He wasn't Anthony Richardson, who had 1 year of starting and ran most of the time. He was a guy with a lot of experience coming in. So he can make it work, and he is making it work. I think we'll hit a rookie bump in the road at some point here, and people will panic, as we always see with rookies. It happens. So, but he looks good right now. These guys are on fire. And even, Jeremy McNichols stepping up for Eckler and getting 2 vulture touchdowns. That could have been an enormous day for Brian Robinson. So B-Rob is looking like a borderline RB1 at this point. So he has been absolutely outstanding and was even better with Eckler down in this game with 21 carries here. So McLaurin also getting back involved with the touchdown. I wish we'd see a little bit more from Ertz, but it's really, McLaurin's kind of the only guy you can depend on in terms of the receiving options for Washington. The Cardinals outside, Kyler Murray looked bad. Connor looked good.
Yep.
Not a lot else. They really missed Trey McBride in this game, I feel like. So impressive performance from the offense in Washington, also holding the ball a decent amount at the end of the game. I thought they had a really good long drive to salt away this game. I thought was great. And Kyler's been a little bit frustrating. Marvin Harrison Jr. has been frustrating, but it got in the end zone for you. So I think this offense is going to be okay, but there are concerns here for sure.
Yeah, Kyler Murray just now has 3 games under 15 fantasy points. Had that big game in week 2, carried a lot of people, I know, to the win. But I have Justin Fields stashed a couple places where I also have Murray, and I think it's now a real conversation each week, don't you?
Yeah, I would say after Justin Fields' performance today, throwing the ball, yes, it is absolutely a conversation now.
Okay. All right. Let's move here to San Francisco, the Bay Area, where the 49ers, they're continuing to win. They beat the Patriots here 30-13, but their offense really isn't carrying the load like it was a season ago here. Jordan Mason did have 24 fantasy points for managers here, but really a disappointing performance from all the other skill players here. Ayuk, 6.8 points. He had that long reception in the first quarter. Didn't get much after that. Deebo Samuel, he got the long ball that kind of saved his day, but only 10.2 PPR points for him as well. Kittle, he got bailed out by the touchdown, 14.5 points for him. And the top 3 fantasy scores for the Patriots, Joey Sly, 11 points. Antonio Gibson, 10.9 points. And Austin Hooper, 9.3 points. Can we trust anyone for the Patriots? And do you think things get better for San Francisco?
I think things will get better for San Francisco for sure. I mean, they were up so quick. They got the Fred Warner pick 6 early in this game that they just leaned on their lead. You know what I mean? Pass when you need to, take some deep shots, which they did, and let Mason run it. And that's how this game turned out. Mason with the 24 carries, 123 yards. And that's why I had him as my 100-yard call on the 3-1-1 last week with Joe Pisapia and Welsh on Monday. So love that. And he also got the touchdown I called. So in New England, I mean, a couple weeks ago, I thought we were going to see a little bit from Hunter Henry. I thought maybe we were going to see a little bit from Jalen Polk, but until they make a switch at quarterback, and I don't know if they're going to do that. I don't think it would behoove them in the future to do that, to put Drake May back there behind a bad offensive line. We saw what happened with Bryce Young, right? So there's just not a lot startable here. Pop Douglas, maybe on a week-to-week basis would be okay. Stevenson is still startable, but he has been unbelievably frustrating with the bad play that he's had. He's also lost a couple fumbles. So Antonio Gibson maybe gets more of a role. Everything looks bad in New England right now.
Yeah. I think maybe you could like throw Gibson in for like a start or like spot RB2 start, but besides that, like there's not a whole lot that I'm really liking or even trying to roster outside the running backs. I think for New England, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll suss out, but eventually, and I hope Stevenson will get back to playing a little bit more normal for him, but it's really all bad. And until someone rises to the top for a couple weeks, you just really can't depend on anybody. Like I said, a couple weeks ago, we thought it was going to be Hunter Henry. He's back to being, I mean, he had more snaps than Hooper, but Hooper caught the touchdown. So it's just all bad.
What about Ayuk, man? Like, what are we doing with Ayuk? Because I mean, this is 4 straight games under 10 PPR points. He's getting the targets. The volume isn't the issue. It just seems like some type of chemistry mishap between him and Brock Purdy, who a year ago they were so locked in. He was one of the most prolific wide receivers in the NFL and most efficient wide receivers in the NFL as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't really have a good answer because I think if you sell him, you're selling him at his bottom dollar.
Right. Yeah.
So, and you're not cutting him. So if you want to bench him, I completely understand that, but there's not a lot of wiggle room here. It's just it's a little bit of suffering through right now. So make another plan for sure. Add somebody and look to see who they're playing and decide your option at game time. But at least have another plan for Ayuk because it has been bad.
Agreed. Let's go to Las Vegas here, where the Raiders they sneak out another one. They moved to 2-2 after beating the Cleveland Browns 20-16. Just 241 total yards for the Cleveland offense. I mean, it's a tough watch sometimes. Like I'm gonna be honest with you, I got a lot of Amari Cooper shares, so I've been paying attention to this offense. Boggs, it hasn't been great. Watson continues to be like somewhat serviceable as a spot start just because he is getting rushing yards and has somewhat of a floor. Keep in mind, we saw Amari Cooper have a total bomb called back. So
I mean, that was like 78 yards and a score on the tackiest hold you've ever seen. That was a terrible call. I feel like the refs in college and in the NFL this weekend a little bit more involved than they need to be. It was bad.
We're not paying to watch you, refs. We're not paying to watch you. Yeah, absolutely. And that was like that was the best play I feel like of Watson's season so far that got called back there. But we're still rolling out Jerome Ford. Not a huge day for him on the ground, just 58 yards. But hey, he did have 7 receptions for 27 yards, which that's kind of what we want from Jerome Ford. He has always kind of been this little bit of more of a receiving back than true power back. So are you still liking what you're seeing out of the auxiliary options here for the Browns, despite Watson's overall struggles and the offense just kind of looking meh?
Man, I just want Jameis Winston to be the quarterback here. I just that
30, baby.
That O-line was not it wasn't protecting anybody. So it really didn't matter who was back there today because I mean, listen, if Max Crosby was back there today, Deshaun Watson might be in a hospital right now. I mean, it was horrific. They were on him in a split second in every play. It was horrible. So Ford, getting us something in a PPR league by getting receptions was great. I think Cooper's going to be okay. I don't trust anything else in Cleveland at all. And it's hard to trust a lot in Vegas right now. I mean, the Browns defense is very good, but Minshew was miserable 14 to
Absolutely.
24, 130 yards, took some big hits. Zamir White finally had 17 carries, another fumble, and Madison had 60 yards on 5 touches. Why are we not giving the ball to Madison more? Is my question. If Zamir White is going to be so miserable, and let's get Brock Bowers more involved when Devontae Adams is down. I did not understand that either. They gave him, he had 1 rush for 12 yards. If he had a rush for 12 yards, try another rush with him. I mean, what are we doing? So I don't know. This Raiders offense is unbelievably frustrating. I do think Myers and Bowers are the guys there. I don't want anything to do with the running backs, though, because White keeps fumbling the ball away, and Madison just looks like the better back, but they're not doing anything in terms of snaps and touches between these guys. It's still Zamir White.
Yeah, and we like Trey Tucker a little bit, I think, as well. Like, potentially, if Devontae Adams is out again next weekend, as Deepak alluded to, Trey Tucker 5 for 41 through the passing game, did get a handoff as well, and took it to the end zone for 3 yards. So don't hate Trey Tucker, but agreed, I'm kind of cold off in general on this Raiders offense. Didn't love the game planning here this week, but they get out with the win. And let's round out the program here with the final game of the afternoon. It was the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Los Angeles Chargers 17-10 on the road. And despite no Derwin James, Travis Kelce could not find the end zone. And hopefully it was not just me who put a ton of money on the anytime touchdown thinking it would come to fruition this week. 7 for 90 for Travis Kelce, though. Did feel like he was a focal point in this game once again. That interception that Mahomes threw that he ended up leading to Rice getting hurt on was going to Kelce. So saw a fair share of targets here. Xavier Worthy looked great as well. 3 for 72 and 1 for him. Noah Gray a little bit involved, but I think the story of the game here for the Chiefs probably is that backfield, right?
Yes.
Yes. I did not think that Kareem Hunt was going to come in and take 14 carries for 69 yards this week. Carson Steele, this was the week to take all the unders on the props after last week, hitting some of those overs. What do you make of this situation here? It feels a little bit gross because we did see Samaje Perine even find the end zone on 5 carries as well.
Yeah, well, look, Carson Steele started this game, and then he fumbled in the first drive, and I don't know that he saw the field again. I don't remember seeing him back out there getting another carry because it was all Kareem Hunt after that. And I did not think, especially after picking him up just this week, that we would see Kareem Hunt be super involved here, right? With the 14 carries and 69 yards. So, but Perine is your passing guy. So they went right to Hunt and it worked. So this is going to be a hot hand offense, I believe. So it looks like Hunt is the guy. When Hunt makes his mistake, maybe we'll go right to Carson Steele. But it was a frustrating day to roster Carson Steele. I thought he was going to be the guy again. He looked great last week. But after that fumble, to the bench, rookie. That's a very Tomlin does that a lot too. If you fumble, you don't see the ball again. It was unbelievably frustrating. So it looks like Kareem Hunt is the guy, and I did not think I'd be sitting here saying that today, Seth. I was not on. 32 teams had 2 weeks to pick this dude up, and nobody did. Mm-hmm. So, and I thought, okay, you're the Chiefs. The guy's been here before. He knows the offense a little bit. You don't have to walk him through all this stuff. You don't have to find a place for him to stay. It's an easy sign. So, all right, kind of like what they're doing with Dalvin Cook in Dallas, right? Like, that run game's been miserable, and Dalvin Cook still hasn't seen the field. So, a little surprising to see those two teams with bad backfields operate in such completely different ways. But Hunt is a guy, and he needs to be picked up if he wasn't added already in your league.
Are you playing him over Steele next week then?
For sure. Yeah. Unless I hear something different in press conferences and stuff like, hey, Steele fumbled, but we're going to go back to him, whatever. Like if we get something like that, okay, great. But if we don't, wheels up for Kareem Hunt.
Keep your head on a freaking swivel with this one, folks.
Yeah.
I really think you got to be plugged in here. Try to figure out, because it's going to be gross either way. Whoever you're playing, this isn't like a 1-for-1 thing. Pacheco goes out, Steele takes over, Hunt takes over. There's a lot of backs that are going to be mixed in there, so keep that in mind. For the Chargers here, Bogman, kind of what you expect, really, from Jim Harbaugh's Chargers and that whole situation there. Justin Herbert, 16 for 27, 179 yards and a touchdown. That one touchdown does go to Ladd McConkey, who finds the end zone after 67 yards here as well. Quentin Johnston, as soon as you feel like you can trust the young gentleman there from TCU, he lets you down, 1 reception, 9 yards. And J.K. Dobbins kind of salvaged his day with a little bit of receiving work, 3 for 30 through the air, but only 32 yards on the ground here on 14 carries. So what do you kind of make of this Chargers offense? Is it still a bit bluff for you, or are you still pounding the table for J.K. Dobbins moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, J.K. Dobbins is still the guy there. It's the Chiefs defense is still good. So that was tough. We know Herbert can't move that much on the high ankle sprain.
Yeah.
So the passing game wasn't great. I have never Quentin Johnston lost me all last year. The Welsh and I had an argument about who to start between him and Keon Coleman last week, and then Keon Coleman didn't show up for the quarter. So, and Johnston had scored, so we were going back and forth on that. And I was like, listen, Quentin Johnston still sucks. Okay. And he had 1 catch here. So maybe he'll be better a little bit moving forward this season, but I still am not liking him. I like McConkey. I like Palmer, both better than him. And it seems like maybe the Chargers do too. So, I mean, not a lot to trust there. Dobbins is fine. I think McConkey's fine. Anybody else is kind of, you're in a deeper league or you're dealing with bye weeks and injuries.
Would you drop Gus Edwards in a 12-team normal PPR league, you think?
Yeah, I think I would. Like, if you can drop Gus and pick up Kareem Hunt, do that all day.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to shout out everyone who tuned in with us live tonight or was watching the recorded version of this as well. We greatly appreciate it. And that'll do it for us tonight on the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. Until next time, like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel and podcast feed. Plus, download the My Playbook app for Scott Bogman. I am Seth Woolcock. Thanks for watching. Take care, y'all.